I'd be jealous too. It's stormy on the highway.
I'd be jealous too if she was with you. I'd be out my mind watching her move. If I was just the guy with across the room view, I'd be jealous too if she was with you, with you. She laughs like she just broke into a hotel pool. She loves deserts and the sunsets out in Malibu. If you felt the way it feels, the way she looks at you, I'd be jealous too. I'd be jealous too. She's a California red in a dive bar, hourglass body like a guitar, and that forever white smile appears like a glitter bomb in the atmosphere. Eyes locked on her like a movie, like they ain't never seen a pair of blue jeans. Can't blame them if they want her like I do. I'd be jealous too if she was with you. I'd be out my mind watching her move. If I was just the guy with across the room view, I'd be jealous too if she was with you. She comes on stronger than a Bourbon Street hand grenade. It's like you know her before you even really know her name. If you could see her in the morning sleeping next to you, just like I get to, I'd be jealous too. She's a California red in a dive bar, hourglass body like a guitar, and that forever white smile appears like a glitter bomb in the atmosphere. Eyes locked on her like a movie, like they ain't never seen a pair of blue jeans. Can't blame them if they want her like I do. I'd be jealous. I'd be jealous.
Hi.
That was my mic.
That's how I started, right?
Somebody's mic. Is that my
That was
mic?
you this time.
Is that my mic?
Yeah, that was you this time.
Yeah,
It's got to be your mic.
I'd like to welcome everybody here to Uber Freight's the weigh-in.
It's his mic.
No, not there.
Mike. Okay, so start again. I'd like to welcome everybody here to Uber Freight's weigh-in live. My name's Greg Murphy. I'm a retired truck driver that is part of the Uber Freight team that is helping putting all this on. I'm going to go around and ask everybody to introduce themselves.
Okay, I'm Ron Sanders. I'm an owner-operator with Green Miles. Been in the business for around 6 years, and I've worked my way up to being an owner and to know quite a bit about the freight system and everything.
I'm John Sism. I'm currently with iTruck Radio, the Black Knight. I'm a 23-year owner-operator and also a 23-year retired Navy veteran.
My name is Annie Youngblood. I'm a market analyst with Comdata. Collectively have no experience compared to these guys, but hoping we can offer a little bit about some of our research and information that we've put together.
I'm Shane Ferris. I'm the owner of Green Miles, a small 100% owner-operator company based out of Willard, Missouri, about 6 miles from Springfield, if anybody knows where that is. Basically building a fleet to serve customers, serve the owner-operator community.
So what we're talking about today is building and running a small fleet. So I think the first things are, what are the biggest hurdles to getting going on something like that? What are the things that make it most difficult to start? What do you think?
Well, the way that the regulations are structured, the hardest part to get started if you want to be a carrier and you want to build a fleet is the insurance. And that's pretty much the first limiting factor, is that insurance will only let you grow so fast. So to keep in mind, you're going to have to factor in a long period of time to build a fleet. But once you get to a certain point, then it becomes exponential. You get to 4, then you can go to 8, then you can go to 16, and then next thing you know, you got 500, and then you're being called a mega carrier and everything. So it takes a while. It's not going to happen in like 5 years. Might happen in 10. I don't see anybody growing that fast, that quickly.
So what you're saying, one of the first big hurdles after getting your authority, moving from being from a company driver or moving to being like a leased-on operator, or to becoming a full-on with authority, is to have the insurance, right?
Yes.
And the other thing is then is there like financing or money thing, something like that?
Yeah, so, credit's important. We were just talking about this earlier. Not always necessary if you're running your business the right way, and I think Shane can talk a little bit more about that. Once you've got insurance, we were talking a little bit about how high the spot rates are right now. We're running,
Very excellent right now.
50 cents over this time last year,
Yes.
which is incredible. So the money's out there to be had, and it's a matter of choosing whether or not you're running credit, factoring, or quick pay for the brokers, which I think Shane can talk a little bit about how that's worked.
As far as, if you're starting off a small carrier and basically trying to start off on a shoestring, we were talking about factoring and whether or not it's a good move or an advantageous move, and everybody's got their own opinions. It's my personal opinion that starting off as a micro carrier that you should avoid factoring at all costs. You can utilize the broker's quick pay market to partially quick pay your receivables to fund your operation at a minimal level possible, make a little bit of sacrifice in a matter of just a few months after just operating on quick pays and kind of using the rest of it to fill that pipeline so that you can wait 30 days, you'll be fully funding your operation and getting 100% of your revenue. Now, factoring does have its place. You get up 4 trucks, 5 trucks, and you've got $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 out on the streets waiting to be collected, and you need to pay your drivers, you need to expand your operation. At that point, factoring is pretty much a necessary evil because there aren't a whole lot of companies, of banks that like to throw money at transportation. It's a very volatile market. It's one of those things that I've found, and also once you get up to that level of factoring, your rates are a lot better.
Exactly.
I see people talking about factoring and paying 3.5% to 5%. Once you extrapolate that out, that's 36 to 60% annual interest on your money because they're 30-day loans basically.
There's a lot of different options for financing. I think that's
So, what do you think?
I find that one thing that's really important, if you're going to have 1 truck or 10 trucks, you have to have a safety net when you go in and start your business.
Yeah.
If you don't have a fund for a safety net, I don't care if you have all new trucks, something is going to happen, you're not going to count on it, and if you don't have that safety net, you're going to go under right away.
What, I mean, like operating capital?
I mean emergency capital, like emergency capital for breakdowns, for anything that could happen to you, really.
I think it also has to do with your knowledge of the business and the knowledge of the industry, and a very healthy relationship with a guy named Murphy. Because if it can go wrong, it will go wrong, and it will affect your
one of my relatives.
Yep, and it will affect your cash flow. And if you have 5 trucks on the road, you got to expect that at any point in time during a week or a month, that 3 of them might break down.
Right.
Murphy might catch you like that. And for smaller businesses, something like that, where you have an engine go, you have a transmission go, and then somebody just blew 2 tires or had a sideswipe incident, that'll wipe out a 5-truck company if you don't have the capital to absorb that $40,000 or $50,000 that it's going to cost you to move on to the next week. So maintenance and knowing that could happen is a huge factor that sinks a lot of people. They'll gamble. They'll say, oh, it's not going to happen to me. They're the guys that it's going to happen to.
It costs what? You're spending, if you're getting a brand new $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 truck, you've got to spend between $6,000 and $10,000 on licensing, getting up. You've got to find a consistent load source. And this is all before you've even started to move freight, right? So you're having to think about all these things. And I think that goes to the operating capital and having some fun. You do need to have some liquid. You need to have some money that you can put into this. I mean, you spend what? On average, 15 cents a mile on maintenance. That adds up.
And plus you have a lot of road expense too, where if you're running the Northeast, the tolls and everything else that people don't count on, it's going to cost you. What happens if you're running out west and they shut down Donner's Pass and you got to sit there for 3 days? You just lost 3 days of revenue that you better be able to cover, or you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, you got to be able to sit for a while.
Yep.
Yeah, and that can be a real safety issue. I have a friend who just recently got his own authority, and I was talking to him, and he said that one of the big ice storms hits, and he says, well, I'm not driving this week because, with insurance, if something happens, I'll be out of business in my first year. So it's better for me to sit and wait, but he still has to have that money to be able to sit and wait and be safe, right?
You bet.
Absolutely.
Bills keep coming whether you're running or not.
So the other thing that I think that's real, in building a fleet is, and I know you can talk to Shane, is about how do you find the people if you're the guy that's got the MC and you're going to build this business? How do you find people that you want to work with?
Well, in reality, it's actually counterintuitive. The way I find the best operators out there is I don't look for them. I found one great operator, came from a big carrier that retains people for years. Treat that operator right, pay them what they're worth, give them the freedom to do their job and don't pester them. They'll bring you more.
Right.
And, you have to set your standards high, because any good operator doesn't want to work for a company that'll hire any schmuck off the streets.
So you really got to elevate your game.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
The word of mouth is going to be your best friend at the lower levels and even at the higher levels. People who will talk good about your company, talk good about your reputation, will get a message across. And those good stories about, what the company did for this guy and what the company did for that guy, not only does it go word of mouth at the truck stop with all of our friends that we came into the business with, but it also goes on social media in the various trucking forums that truck drivers love to talk. And 90% of it is negative. It is, crying and moaning. But the other 10% is talking about green miles and how great it is to come over once you have the experience, once you have the truck, and once you have, the years behind your belt and the level, you have to.
Thing that I think is really important in this industry, and I think it gets lost a lot of times. We talk to folks about how they attract operators, drivers, whomever, and just having somebody that's reliable in this business is so huge.
Oh yeah,
it's hard to find it. It's hard to find it too.
I was talking to one guy, and it was a great quote. He said something like, "In any other industry, if you're on time and you're right 99% of the time, you get an A+. In this industry, you get sent home." And so I think that reliability is a huge thing when you're looking for somebody. Like, you want to know they're going to show up.
Sure.
They want to know the load's going to be there.
Absolutely. I say all the time, I really thank all my competition for setting the bar in this industry so low. It makes it so easy for us to excel.
Uh-huh.
All you have to do is tell them what you're going to do and then do it. That's all it takes.
So here's another thing. So you think that there's reputation, right?
Yes.
Then is it also like who you know, who you've been working with, for instance, in getting freight, or is it a relationship business in a lot of ways?
There is definitely a relationship component. But going back to it, works the same as the recruiting component. When you find that one good relationship, and you nurture that relationship, and you take care of them, and you show them that they're important, you show them that you care about what they do, they're going to bring you the rest of your connections. And their connections are going to bring you more connections. It's a domino effect that as long as you're doing it right and you're honoring your commitments, and let's be honest, this is trucking. Things happen. Things go wrong. You know what? If I've got your load on my truck and I get stuck in a snowstorm, you don't want to hear about that snowstorm after I'm already late. You want to know about it 2 days in advance so that you can tell your warehouse, let's reschedule this.
Right, exactly.
And I can add to that with like an ethical thought process. And a lot of people say, well, you should be apologizing all the time. Well, I have a little bit of a different view. If you think ethically and you make ethical decisions, whenever you talk to people, whenever you do business, you're not going to have to apologize so much.
Right.
So you really have to put that up front, because your actions are going to speak louder than your words. And an action is doing something, and apologizing is just words. So if you're thinking ethically and you're making those decisions and you're doing the job that you say you're going to do, like Shane said, you're going to set yourself up for success, because you're not going to have to apologize for stuff. I think a lot of people would rather hear you say, hey, there's a snowstorm that's going to hit that area before you book the load, rather than when you're parked.
Right.
So sometimes you have to take it back that far. So ethics really do matter, and having that mindset all the time when you're making decisions and you're talking to people matter, because it does come out, whether it's now or whether it's later, and it affects your reputation.
So we talked about, in terms of you getting started, obviously, everybody agrees that, having being a strong ethical background, doing what you're going to say, being on time, and all those things, you're going to do what you're going to say you're going to do. Then we get into the more technical aspects, like you mentioned. Once you got your MC all set up, then you get insurance, and then credit. Do you think that credit has a, because you work for Comdata, you know a lot about this? What do you think about that?
I mean, credit's important. There are ways to run without it, but being able to finance, build up your credit beforehand, being willing to use your personal information, establish credit early on, so that you can get a provider, so that you can get a fuel card, so that you can be part of a discount program. There's a lot of good that comes with that.
Right.
If you're working towards that and establishing that with a goal in mind, when you get to that point, you don't have to worry about it, because you can obtain it.
Okay, so let me rephrase my question a little bit, because I just rethought about it. If a guy now is like a company driver, right, and he wants to move up to the next level, which is become a lease operator, and find somebody that's got an MC or whatever, or maybe become his own MC, the path to how many company drivers, what's the best way for them to manage their credit?
Yeah.
And what do a lot of them not have credit ratings because they just don't?
Yes, right. So we see a lot of people that have not gone out and established credit. They've decided that the spot rate market is so high. They've worked for a trucking company for 17 years on average, actually, and on average for 3.5 different companies. And all of a sudden, this is what I want to do, right? And I think our point here is, as John said earlier, that's great that you want to make that decision, but you got to find cash. You need something. You need $6,000 to $10,000 to even start.
Right.
So my advice would be, if it's something that you want to do, take time and do it right. Step back, plan ahead, take your time. Yes, rates are high. Yes, it's gangbusters out there right now. There's still freight. Demand is expected to continue to rise about 3.5% this year. It's not going anywhere. Right. Truck driving isn't going anywhere. So if it's something that you really want to do, you do have to take a step back and think about what that's going to look like. Maybe getting a credit card, making sure that you have a bank account and using it and establishing that. So when you do break down on the side of the road, or you do want to access discounts or be part of a fuel card program, you'll be able to. Preparation is huge.
And you brought up lease. Be very careful when you go out and look for, if you're going to do a lease purchase, you need to be very, very careful. Really read over the contract before you even talk about it and see what they're talking about. And a lot of them will say no money down, no this, no that, but they don't report your lease. So you don't get any credit rating from having that lease. Right. So you want to make sure that they report your lease as a credit.
So maybe it makes more sense to, if I'm a company driver, does it make more sense for me to just, get a credit card, use it lightly, or use it regularly, start building up my credit, so then if I'm going to go to lease a truck, I've got enough credit to actually get a good deal? Or
you don't even have to lease it. You can go, if you got good enough credit, you can go to a dealer or Aero Truck or one of the, and actually buy a truck and own it. You don't have to worry about it.
Credit's about establishing history.
Right.
And we all need that, not just in the trucking industry, but in our daily lives. There are ways, as we were talking about earlier, to proceed without it. And that's a personal opinion. That's whatever you want to do. You can factor off your receivables if that's an option. But before you even get to that point, you still need to have cash. I mean, that's...
We were talking earlier before we came up here, and I believe I asked, what's the hardest part of starting? And you said have a plan, right?
Yes. When you start a company, you've got to look into your future and decide, what do you want to be? There's absolutely nothing wrong with somebody coming in and getting their authority and they want to be a one-truck operator and they just want to run their whole show and that's all they want to do. Well, you're going to be a one-truck operator is going to be different than if you plan on being 10 trucks in 5 years, or if your ultimate goal is to have 100 trucks. You've got to decide if you're going to be, a 10 truck or 20 truck or 30 truck company. You've got to find out that, hey, one of the most important parts of that is to have a good transportation management system in your office. We've gone through several of them and found out that it takes time to find the right one. But if you're going to be a one truck owner operator, hey, you can run most of your operations honestly on a pad of paper and a pencil. I mean, you can make handwritten invoices and send them out if you have to. I mean, really, that's kind of extreme. But I did it off when I was running one truck. I did it all off of my iPad, off of apps that I could download. I sent my books online and tracked them that way. And now that we're running 12 trucks, we need something considerably more robust.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me is when you go from being a company driver to an owner operator, you're no longer just a truck driver. You're a businessman now. You own a business.
Well said.
And you have to run it like a business. And the first thing you do when you start a new business, you make a business plan. You make a plan for your company. How I want to spend it, how I want to advance it. Do I want to stay as one truck? Do I want to get to 500 trucks? And if you got that down and you follow that business plan and look at it like it's your company and you're not going to spend all that money going down to the truck stop, you're going to make money and you'll advance. Right. But you can't just look at it as, okay, here's my truck, I made this much money, I'm putting all this money and spending it. It doesn't work that way. You got to have...
It's essential to know how much it costs you to run your truck.
Right, and then when you do it,
$190,000 a year.
And then pay yourself like an employee. You pay yourself so much out of it, and the rest of the money goes back to the truck. Right. And it works every time. You never have a problem.
That's one of my biggest frustrations when I talk to owner-operators out here is you ask them what their operating costs are, and they'll give you some ridiculously low number like, I run my truck for 90 cents a mile, or I run it for $1 a mile. Like, really, how much do you pay your driver? And you get a response, well, whatever's left after I pay my operating expenses, that's my driver's pay. No, that's your profit. You need to have a driver's pay in that for what you're not working for free as a driver. If you need 50 cents a mile as a driver, pay yourself 50 cents a mile. Then what's left after that is your profit.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think one of the things that everybody should do, and do this periodically, is you have to know yourself and you have to understand the nature of business. In the world, 80% of the businesses fail. In trucking, 80% of owner-operators that move up fail. And you hear all these stories, and everybody will say it can't be done. The lease operator thing, I did it through a lease at Prime. I was successful. I made sure that I knew what I was doing, read the contract, knew what my position was, and took advantage of it. But you have to understand that you have an 80% chance of failing right out of the gate. So you have to be sharp. You have to do your homework. You have to study exactly how the business works. You have to understand the positives and negatives. You got to understand how everything's going to negatively affect you, as well as how much money you can make. If you don't understand all of these things, then you're going to set yourself up for failure. And that's the important first step, is understanding how business works in general, understand our business, and understand yourself so you know whether you have the ability to do it. Some people, sorry guys, do not have the ability to run a business. And maybe they do later on in life. Maybe they need to learn by failing several times, but they need to know that going in. They need to prepare themselves, because otherwise it just becomes a big old cry fest, and it can't be done. And I don't know how Rob Lowe at Prime did it, but it just can't be done anymore. Well, everybody's doing it, and the people are being successful, but that's only 20% out of everybody who tries. So you have to bring a bit of realism to exactly what you're doing. You got to bring a realism to your plan, and you got to face the music. It might fail, and what are you going to do if it does?
Right.
Are you going to cry, or are you going to move forward?
Another thing I found is if you go to a company, it may be great for me, but it may be horrible for Greg.
Right.
Because he runs different than I do. And you really got to find a company or a broker, if you're obviously an independent, that matches how you run. Because if you get the one that doesn't match how you run, it's not going to work. You got to find somebody that matches what you do with that truck and how you like to run that truck. That's going to make money at that level. Like, he may like to run his truck 5,000 miles a week. I don't know. I hope not, but
Hopefully he has a co-driver if he's doing 5,000.
I'm an old man. I'm an old man. I like to run my truck now about 2,500 miles a week. So I may look for freight that's going to pay higher than I'm only going to run 25. I may sit a little longer, but I'm going to get my 2,500 miles in a week. Right. Where he wants to move, he's not going to care as much.
That brings up a good point. Is I think that it's really important to, before you get going, to really know how to find freight, to have know the markets, know all the lanes, know the lane that you're going to be comfortable in.
Definitely.
Yes, our most successful operator at this company is actually the guy that is the most focused on where he runs. We've got people that will run anywhere you tell them to go. And then we've got one guy that lives in Kansas, and basically he will run out of his normal every once in a while, but his normal deal is he runs Kansas and Southwest Missouri, and that's it. But he knows that market.
And there's good rates in that area, too. There's real good rates.
He's developed relationships with brokers that actually are not just brokers, but they're actually the shipper.
Right.
And he knows they call him when they've got something. He services them well, and he gets paid a premium for doing it.
And he's probably not even close to being the highest mileage driver you got.
No.
He's way down the list because
he's probably middle of the road as far as how many miles he runs, but he's also the most efficient.
Efficiency.
Very, very low fuel costs. Doesn't spend much of anything, grosses the most and spends the least and takes home the biggest paycheck. It's almost painful to write his checks every week.
and if you're getting called before it hits the spot market for that load, it's going to pay you better than anybody else.
Right.
Because they want you. They don't just want to put it on the spot market for the next available truck. They're actually saying, I want this guy to run this load, and I'll pay him whatever it takes. And that's like the top level.
So we're kind of going full circle there, back to being that integrity. You're going to do what you say. You're going to be there. You're going to be the
the broker or the customer trusts you.
Right.
They know they're going to get service from you.
Do you think that's changed in the last 10, 15 years?
Nope.
That's pretty much a consistent thing?
I think, there's a dynamic in play right now where a lot of technology is coming in, and we're losing some of that face-to-face direct interaction. And the newer generation is more accepting of it than the older generation is. And I think we will see some change. But ultimately, back in my days with Prime, we found out that, when you get a newer generation comes into a position, they go through a learning curve like everybody else. There's a major shipper that handles a lot of small packages in this company that Prime does a lot of business with. Well, it was kind of a cycle. Every time their shipping department manager changed, they canceled the contract because our rates were too high. 3 months later, they were calling us back going, we can't find anybody to deliver on time. Well, we'll come back, but it's going to cost you more.
Yeah, you're absolutely,
I think that there's been a big disruption in human communication that's not just caused a problem in our industry, but I think it's caused a problem in business in general. And that's how we communicate. We're not just communicating face-to-face or even by phone anymore. We have these phone systems that tell people who's calling and whether we want to talk to them or not.
Right.
I mean, a lot of brokers, believe it or not, if you call them, they're going to know who you are. They're going to know how many loads you pulled. They're going to know whether you did a good job or not. They're going to know whether you have a good score or not with the FMCSA. And they're going to have notes whether the broker liked you or not.
Right.
So that's right up front. And then, you know, over the past 10 or 15 years, social media and, you know, telephones have pretty much broken down good, solid communication. So we're relearning how to effectively communicate with everybody using the technology as well. So it kind of like fell off. It kind of like got muddled, but now everybody's learning to put their sentences back together.
Right, exactly.
How to be polite with words and all that kind of stuff.
And
that's a big, whoever's in front of that is going to have an advantage as well.
I think that's a big change, too, in the industry with the FMCSA scores, that the people are looking at it, the shippers are looking at it, the brokers are looking at it. They're saying, this guy is a good driver. He's got a 0 thing. Or this guy's got 45 points. You know, we don't really want him pulling our freight. And it's public knowledge now.
Yeah, and to your point, one of the things that I found super, super fascinating by the industry is that there is all this technology and there is all of this innovation. But this industry's got long memory, right?
Oh,
there's a lot of, we did this way for a long time.
Sure.
We've got customers that have been with us for 30 years because we helped them out, you know, when they needed something 15 years ago, and they're still with us. And I think that's an important thing that we can't lose, is that we've got this technology, got this ability to communicate more effectively through technology. But I mean, would you guys agree that the industry is still very much about that relationship? And I mean,
Absolutely. If you can't nurture a relationship, then it just becomes completely transactional. I mean, this whole industry works completely on a cycle. You know, we talk about, for example, how we're in a great market now. Well, I can tell you right now, I've got guys that'll run certain loads for certain customers for less than they'll run for others because of the relationship in place.
Yeah.
When we were in a bad market, we had certain customers that would pay because of the relationship that was in place.
Yeah.
You know, and going back to that cycle, to touch on something that I wanted to say earlier, keep in mind, if you're going to come into this and you're going to become a carrier, don't set your operation up to work in today's market. Set your from 2 years ago when we were barely scraping by, because this peak market will end in a couple of years, and I don't want to see you go bankrupt when it happens.
Right. That's getting back to having a cushion when you start, and always keep it there, and have you know, realistic goals for how much you're going to make, right?
Yes.
So, you know, yeah.
Well, there is a scary aspect to this, and that's the survival of the fittest in the market. And it starts off when you get your driver's license, get your CDL. If you have accidents, you're not going to have the potential that everybody else is going to have. So everything about you as a driver and your professional portfolio or your reputation, you have to take that seriously. These guys that get out there and they drive 80 miles an hour and they cut people off and they do all of this very risky behavior, their ability or their potential to rise up to this level or to get their own authority and actually be successful over the long run is diminished because they're operating very, very risky behavior.
Right.
And that matters, and that's going to take them out. So that is a fact of life, no matter which way you look at it, and you got to mitigate it. You have to prepare for it, because bad circumstances are going to hit everybody at some point. It's how you handle it and how you come out the other side that determines whether you fall down or whether you fall up.
And I think it's important too, one of the things that we've touched on a little bit is, you know, when you're starting your small business, which is what this is, we talked about sort of the technical aspects, sort of those intangibles, but I mean, how many hats do you guys wear, right? You're the CEO, you're running payroll, maybe you own your own truck. I mean, talk a little bit about how that's huge. I mean, you've got to also be able to know how to do it. So, I mean, you've got to know how to do a lot of different things. It's not about just getting your license and, you know, getting a truck and going down.
Well, that's one of the things that I've believed. I mean, growing up with a father that was in the military, we never had the option of saying, that's not my job.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, if it needs to get done, you do it. Yeah, we call it different hats. We can call it, this is that person. The bottom line is when you're starting off your business, how many hats you're going to wear depends on how many hats there are, because you're going to wear all of them.
Oh yeah.
I've moved from, I'm transitioning from being a truck driver, being an owner operator, to actually moving into Shane's office and actually start organizing and start wearing some of those hats. And you have to be a very organized, you have to be a very effective, you have to be a very regimented person when it comes to your office affairs, because those little things might come back and bite you in the butt later, also with inspections, losing receipts. 2 years later, you find out that, you couldn't deduct $26,000 for an engine because you lost a receipt or whatever, so you really have to have good, effective office management, whether you're a one truck operator or even if you're an owner operator leased on to somebody else. You have to start by keeping track of everything that you do and having a good accounting system, having a good managing system for your maintenance and everything else. If you're not doing that, something's going to slip through the cracks. Nature's going to take hold and you're going to be the victim. So you have to make sure.
There's a lot of other expenses that people don't think about when they become an owner or operator. You have medical insurance, dental insurance. You got to pay for that yourself now. It's no freebie from the company. You have occupational accident insurance, which takes place at workman's comp. There's all kinds of little other payments that come into the side that you don't think about when you're doing it, but it's there and it adds up real quick. So that's why that fund, when you were saying when the market gets better, that's when you save that extra money. You get that extra money. You don't take more out. You save it more into your company. That way, next time you can buy a truck, you're buying it for half of what you would have financed it for before, because you got the cash to do it. So your company's not in debt as much. You want to keep your company out of debt as much as possible.
So I've got kind of a forward-looking question. Is what do you think the freight rates are going to be in the next, year, 2 years?
I honestly think they're going to go up.
Yeah.
Partly because of the tax thing and the political climate right now. Also because of the shortage of drivers. The brokers and the trucking companies can ask for premium rates now because there's not enough drivers out there to pull the freight that's out there.
Yeah. My immediate future look is I think for the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to continue to climb. We've seen a spike. I think we're going to level that spike a little bit, and we're going to start a gradual climb for the next 2 to 3 years, and then our basic 7-year cycle will be over with. We'll start a new one with the market plummeting and people going bankrupt.
No.
Everybody pulls their hair out.
It's going to happen. I can promise you. I've seen it multiple times. Here's the thing. It's simple supply and demand. Right now, there's a ton of freight. There's not that many carriers out there, but there's a lot of people coming into the business.
Right.
And a lot of people coming into the business are going to get used to seeing this $3.50, $4 a mile freight out there, and that's what they're going to build their business model on. Well, once there's more carriers than there are freight, it just happens. Mm-hmm. It's a drop in the market. You'll see all these trucks get turned back in. I don't think we'll ever drop back down to $1 a mile freight again. It's never going to happen. Too many restrictions, too many regulations in place. But I think when the market drops in 3 years, give or take, we're going to be dropping to $2.50 a mile, maybe close to $3. But there's going to be people that built their operation off of $4 a mile freight that aren't going to be able to sustain.
Right.
And I mean, you have to think about it from a macroeconomic perspective too. Okay, we're at near full employment, meaning that everybody that wants a job mostly has one. We're running at 2.5% GDP growth, which is expected to continue through at least 2026. And this year, demand for freight is actually anticipated to grow 1% faster than GDP growth. Imagine that. The demand for these goods that need to be moved is going to grow faster, at a faster rate than they're produced. Right? That can only be a good thing for rates. Now, shippers may not necessarily feel the same way. Right? But this industry, at least in the near term, if you take into consideration the macroeconomic economy, you take into consideration the tax law, which is been a boost for a lot of businesses, is going to continue to be strong. I mean, that's what we're looking at least in the the near term.
Walking over here through the West Wing, I saw more recruiters over there today than I've seen in 10 years here.
Okay.
It's packed over there.
There's a few things that are going to make recruiting and everything pretty much not really matter. A few things to think about is they can't build the trucks and trailers fast enough for what's going on right now.
Yep.
So that's one factor.
Yep.
Okay, like she said, we're at full employment.
Yep, we are.
But to get somebody to come in the industry average, I think, is in the 40s for people coming in. And those were people over the past 5 years like me that lost their other job and were coming to this industry because it's a good money-making industry. Those people are going back to those other jobs because we're at full employment. So you're not going to be able to get the drivers to drive the trucks. They're going to have to find other ways to move the freight. They're going to have to prioritize what gets moved now and what gets moved whenever the market fluctuates. They're going to have to, they're going to have to adjust for that.
Yep.
And somehow society is going to have to start sending a message out to the younger kids
Yep.
to say, hey, look, these are some really awesome business opportunities that you can't start out fresh out of college with making $100,000 a year. You're not going to do it anywhere else except here. But who wants to jump in a truck and drive a truck and be in the environment that we are in?
Right.
There's some sacrifices to doing business, but until people come to that realization, until that fire gets lit, it's going to completely compress and push rates up and up and up until some people decide to start driving.
And I also think that with the new generation, they don't want to be out as long as the older generation did without on the road. And they're going to have to come up with a system that's more efficient where these guys can get home more often.
Yeah.
They're just not going to come and take these jobs.
Oh.
Oh, got quiet.
Yeah. So I guess we're getting close to the end here. Start wrapping up. The conversation is really important, I think, and talking about it and stuff, and finding the sources of good information are really important. Do you have any recommendations of good places to find good source of information to learn about things?
I'll say coming to the truck show, talking to people, talking to small business owners,
right.
Talking to owner-operators that actually have been successful.
Yeah. Networking, go to the seminars here.
Yeah. Stay away from the people who say it can't be done. Right. If they start talking about that, just move on. Find somebody that says it can, and here's how.
Also stay up in the industry by reading different industry, like Truck Paper, Landline. There's always good articles in all those magazines. And you can find stuff out and really just talk to different people in the trucking industry in the different areas, and they can help you out.
Ask the questions that you need. Yeah.
You bet.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
And there's a ton of trade associations out there, whether it's owner-operators, carriers, the ATA, the American Trucking Association. There's plenty of resources there for folks. There are plenty of providers in the space that have a lot of knowledge that can help. So I think it's a matter of people learn in different ways. Find the way that's best for you, whether it's networking, whether it's reading, whether it's experience, and move forward with that. There's
a lot of drivers out there. Just talk to a driver. If you see a guy he's an owner-operator, ask him how he did it. And then most guys will tell you.
Don't discount social media.
Social media is another. We
have a Rate Per Mile Masters group that has 20,000 people, and it is like one of the best resources of information.
Yep.
And it's developing from a cry fest to an actual level where it's conducive to good business information.
So I guess our time's almost up. Anybody got one last little thought?
Last thought is, chase your dreams.
I like that one.
Doesn't matter where you want to be, what you want to do. Find out where you want to be. Know where you want to be. Formulate a plan to get there, and execute on the plan relentlessly.
Yeah.
If you never quit trying, you never fail.
That's right.
I agree with chase your dreams. Also, to go along with that, do your research. Yeah. If you're gonna go into no matter what you do, you need to research what you're going to go into so you know what you're getting into. and starting it out right before you do it, or you're going to, like I said, 80% fail. There's an 80% fail in this, and that shouldn't be.
Make good decisions.
Exactly.
Make good decisions.
I
If you
just want to figure out what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, you've got to be prepared. I think being prepared is huge. No one is going to be successful if they just decide they're going to tomorrow quit their job and open a small business. It just doesn't work like that. It is possible. It's possible to be successful. It takes a lot of hard work. You guys are all living proof of that. That if you do work hard and you do prepare and you make the right decisions, that you can be successful.
Well, I guess that's it. Thanks for being part of the conversation.
Thank you
You're
for
to
having
weigh
us.
in, and now this is going to be streamed both on, or was streamed, I should say, on Facebook
We're
and
real time,
YouTube.
right?
Yeah, we're live. Yeah,
We're famous
Oh,
now.
man.
So we'll be back on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly,
Outstanding.
exactly.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Good job, dude.
Thank you.
Good job.